Thanks everybody for coming along to our session today. We got the, here we go, that helps. Back in May or whatever it was, I think, when they asked for submissions for VMworld, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought I was going to present to a crowd of this size, but here we are. Got a lot to get through today, so I'm just going to jump straight in. First of all, we'll start with a few introductions. My name's Tim Carman. I'm an IT consultant based out of Melbourne, Australia. I work for a company by the name of Thomas de Rey Logicalis. I predominantly work in the infrastructure space, dealing with virtualization, storage, BC, DR, cloud. You can follow me on Twitter at tpcarman. I've also got a blog at timcarman.net. A lot of the information you'll hear about today will be available on my blog, both now and in future. And the code you're going to see today is also available on my GitHub page. Now I'll pass it over to my co-presenter who can do his introduction.
Cool, thanks Tim. Thanks everyone for coming along. I know how busy this event is, so I really appreciate you all taking the time to come and listen to what we've got to say. So my name's Matt Allford and I'm based out of Tasmania, Australia, which is much better than where Tim's from in Melbourne. So I'm off the little island down the bottom, nice and tropical, beaches, all that kind of thing. So I work for a systems integrator similar to Tim, based out of New Zealand. We cover Australia and New Zealand, and you can find me on Twitter at Matt Allford. I blog much more than Tim does at virtualtassie.com, and you can see my hacks of code up there at GitHub as well. Just go easy on me, all right? So I want to cover off the agenda just to kind of set the scene for what we're going to go through here as well. So first of all, we're going to dive into the problem and project statements. So that's kind of going through the what and the why. You know, why is it that we've gone and created this framework, and what challenges did Tim especially have day to day, you know, dealing with customers and creating documentation, specifically as-built documentation. From there, we'll go into some of the concepts and the tool sets as well. So we kind of took those challenges and then said, well, what is it that we're trying to achieve that'll match those requirements, and what tool sets are then going to be used as well. From there, Tim will talk about the actual as-built report itself. So he'll, I guess, introduce what we've done and take you all through it just with a couple of slides explaining the different sections and how it's bolted together. After that, we'll do a live demo. So that is going back some 14,000 kilometres. I'm not sure if anyone can do that in miles for me. I forgot where I was. But that's back to my lab in Tasmania. So we need a minute of silence when we get to that section just to make sure it goes through. I've been pulled up a lot this week on my Australian slang as well, so sorry if any of that comes through. After the demo, we'll jump into the contributing as well. So, and that's more than just, you know, writing code and contributing to the project. There's quite a few things that you all can do to actually help out. So we'll cover that off. And then we should have a few minutes at the end, hopefully, for some Q&A. So I want to dive into the problem statement, and I'm going to read this directly off here, and there's a couple of key points in here that you'll see us refer back to throughout the next 50 minutes or so. And the problem statement that we had was the constant need to deliver detailed, consistent, up-to-date, as-built documentation for multiple technologies. And for Tim and I especially, and you know, any consultants or IT pros basically in the room, there were three key things there. The first one was detailed. We've had a lot of struggles with other tools and getting the information that we require. The next one is consistent, and the third one is multiple technologies as well. So those are the three key things that you'll see us refer back to. So I just want to dive into each of the problem statements that kind of drove this project. You know, what is it and why are we here and what have we done? So the first problem that we have a lot is missing, incomplete or outdated documentation. So I can't count the number of times we've gone into environments and, you know, one of those is true. It's very rare that you go in, we find, and that they've got, you know, detailed designs, implementation plans, as-built documentation. They might have something that's a bit out of date, and sometimes that can be, you know, somewhat useless, especially if you've been called in to fight fires as well. There's nothing worse than trying to work on an environment without an idea of what it looks like. and how it was meant to be configured. The next one is the lack of comprehensive reporting tools. So there's a lot of tools that Tim and I use in our day-to-day work to pull some of this information out manually, or have done previously. But the struggle that we've had is that it hasn't had that level of detail that we needed. Some tools do, and that's great for some sections of the information that we're trying to pull out. But other tools that are used for various purposes, you know, they're very high level, and usually you couldn't change that and set what you wanted either. There was no option to set that granularity. From there, we had an issue with the reporting tools being inconsistent in their style, output, and their formatting. So Tim and I work for systems integrators, and at the end of the day, we've got to hand this documentation over to customers. So we can't go and, you know, give them an Excel sheet or a CSV or even HTML. It's got to be, you know, wrapped up nicely in the right styling and fonts for our respective companies, and sometimes some other fonts as well. So moving on from that, manually generating documentation is time consuming and error prone, and that's probably, I don't know about you, Tim, but that's probably the key driver for this whole thing, is the time consuming.
Absolutely. Like, we've always had to deliver as-built documentation, and in the past for myself, a lot of that was done manually. So that was the key driver for this project.
And hopefully everyone's aware that there's been a driver for a number of years for automation. It's kind of, you know, do it once, run it many times. If you run into an issue or an error, go and fix it up once, go again. It really speaks true for this project as well. And the last one is that every environment's different. So again, being consultants, you know, on a Monday morning we can be in an environment that's got vSphere 6 with vSAN. And the next one, you know, in the afternoon, we're dropped into an environment that's got, you know, running vSphere 6.7 with NSX and Site Recovery Manager as an example, with a storage-based array. So in the past, we've had templates, you know, for as-built documentation, and you can create sections in there, but you're still manually copying that information across out of maybe some scripts or some tools that you've got. But then you've got to go and remember which sections have you missed, or which ones, you know, do you need to remove because they're not valid for the environment that you're working on. So I'll hand it across to Tim here to take us through the statement.
Thanks, Matt. So yeah, we've outlined our challenges, and now I wanted to create a project statement to define what I was setting out to achieve. And as Matt stated, we wanted to easily produce as-built reports which are clear and consistent across multiple vendors and technologies. So simplicity was one key objective. If it's too complex, then nobody's going to want to use it. Not only in using the tool, but deploying it, updating it and maintaining it. Consistency, we've touched on this many times. So as consultants, we deliver reports which need to look and feel like our corporate brand and look and feel the same across multiple documents that we present. So
the other thing I forgot to touch on there, Tim, was that we obviously work in teams of people as well. So, you know, I think Tim's got 10 guys that work in his team, so they're out doing this all over the place. And sometimes, you know, in the managed services or the consulting business, we're not in customers' environments every day. So Tim could get pulled into an environment that he hasn't been into for months, and for him to be able to open up the documentation and get that consistent feel because someone else in his team's used this tool to output that, and they've not come up with their own, you know, document and slightly different thing, that's pretty key for us as well.
Yeah. Wanted it to be modular, so I wanted to be able to create a documentation set not only for one vendor but for multiple vendors or technologies. So, you know, again, we go into customers and we produce as-built reports for their VMware environment, their storage environment, their network environment, all different types of environments. I didn't want another tool for a specific job. I wanted a tool that could range across multiple technologies and produce the same output. So granularity. So VMware has lots and lots of detail in terms of the settings, the objects, and the related objects to it, right? So in terms of granularity, sometimes you just want a really high-level summarized view of your environment. Other times you might want to go really deep. For a pure storage array or, a nimble array or something like that, there's not a lot of detail you really need to go into there. So, you can, there's not a lot of objects or in-depth detail you need to capture. So we wanted to be able to set that granularity within a report very simply. And then we wanted to be able to automate that, but not only for, one vCenter, but all your vCenters, for instance, or all your storage arrays of that particular vendor. So if you've got 3 storage arrays, I didn't want to create 3 reports. I wanted to create 1 report to specify all 3 arrays. So I'm pretty new to the whole automation world. I've been dabbling in stuff in PowerShell, but by no means was I, a master of any sort of scripting language or automation tools. So I wanted to draw upon what was already out there and take what was good about those products and utilise those, and then address anything that I saw as a concern or a disadvantage to that product. So RV tools. Who in here has not used RV tools?
There's a couple.
More hands than I thought. Well, for any vSphere administrator, this tool is a fantastic tool, and as an IT consultant, it's something I use on a regular basis, as does Matt. It's very comprehensive. It provides great detail, something we use a lot in sizing environments and just gathering information. However, it only works with vSphere. It doesn't work with other vendors and technologies. It requires the installation of a third-party application, which isn't always allowed in customer environments, and it only exports to Excel. So as we mentioned before, giving an Excel spreadsheet to a customer and saying, there you go, is not really suitable. Next one we should all be familiar with is vCheck. So once again, a fantastic tool, very comprehensive. It's modular in that there's different plugins which you can do health checks within your VMware environment. It supports multiple styles, so Alan created different style sheets and everything for that particular look and feel of vCheck. However, it only exports to HTML. So HTML is better to present than Excel to customers, but again, it's not really a document artifact that most customers want. It also doesn't support sort of multiple systems. So I know there's, I think, some functionality that can do checks against UCS. However, it's very limited in terms of what systems it can connect to and report upon. The third one, I drew a lot of inspiration from Jake Rutsky's vCenter inventory script. So this was a script that I found quite a few years ago, trying to address the challenges that I had, particularly around building vSphere as-built reports. So it was great in that it had a lot of detail. It was granular in that you could be selective in the type of detail that you wanted to get out of it. It could support Word doc and HTML formats. However, it required Microsoft Word to be installed on that machine that you were extracting the information from. So I found that to be rather a challenging fact, because I would try it on my laptop and it would work okay. I would try it on my home PC and it wouldn't work as well. And my colleague couldn't get it working at all. So, it had its challenges. It also, again, only supported vCenter or vSphere, and whilst wanting to add or improve Jake's script, I found it really complex to do. So I set out about overcoming those with what you're about to see today. So I'm going to hand back to Matt, and he can talk us through some of the tools we decided on.
Thanks, Tim. So if you all read the session title, which I'm assuming you did because you're here, you'll probably know what toolset we've built this on. But I want to cover off some of the requirements, I guess, that we went through to come to that decision of using PowerShell. The first one is that it needed to be widely adopted by IT professionals, so that's probably most of us in the room. There was no point in Tim and I looking at a tool set or a language or what have you that was a bit of a corner case or niche even. So we want everyone to be able to understand this, you know, at least read it and make your way through it and hopefully contribute to it as well. The second one was that it needed to be widely adopted and supported by the vendors as well. So we didn't want to have to create, well, we didn't want to create a tool that had all these requirements and dependencies on, you know, a vendor having a tool or a you know, command line tool or what have you that you can download and then launch from there. It was going to get very messy very quickly if we needed to rely on a vendor-specific tool that worked a slightly different way, and again, it wouldn't get us that detailed level of reporting that we wanted. Yeah, there's a lot of vendors that will release some tools, but it's kind of like a one-pony approach. The next one was that we wanted it to be simple to install, update and use. So Tim covered off. If it's not simple to install, no one's going to do it. No one's going to want to sit there for 45 minutes and install some, you know, dependencies and then drop on a .NET tool and what have you. It's just not going to work too well. The next one was we wanted it to be a beginner to expert tool. So Tim and I are at the left-hand side of that scale, I'd say. We're definitely not PowerShell experts by any mean. And we wanted anyone who's a beginner to be comfortable with this as well. So, you know, if you want to go and read it and have a go at creating some sections or some reports, you know, absolutely go for it. But we also wanted it to have that expert level as well, where there's heaps of people in this community and probably in this room who are experts in PowerShell, and they can create some sections or some reports that are a bit harder, but they can also coach and mentor and I guess teach some of us who are less experienced as well. Lastly, we wanted support for multiple operating systems. So I don't want to start a religious war in here because I've seen a lot of Macs around at the moment, but everyone's different. Some people have got Windows devices, some are on Mac, some are on Linux. Again, we didn't want to create a tool that forced the Mac users to go and, you know, install Fusion, drop a Windows box on, and then install this on there. We wanted it to be cross-platform, and that, of course, led us to PowerShell. Thankfully, they've somewhat recently released that cross-platform, which solved that last one for us. So thanks to Microsoft for that. Now, the thing is as well that VMware have, of course, got PowerCLI, and VMware were pretty early adopters on the PowerShell train. So if any of you have used it, the PowerCLI modules are pretty rock solid. And as Tim and I have branched out, even into some of the other areas of the VMware tools, they start to get a little bit sketchy and, you know, returning not quite what you're expecting as well. So in those instances, and then this is the key one for getting across multiple vendors as well, is that, of course, PowerShell can reach out and hit a RESTful API. So if a vendor doesn't have a PowerShell module or, you know, to download and install, then we can just use REST APIs to hit that endpoint. And again, all we're doing here is pulling information out of an environment and outputting that to a consistent style. So a lot of the vendors, you know, as of recently, you know, over the last 3 or 4 years, probably longer, are really getting on the train of supporting RESTful APIs. So we thought that covered off a lot of the technology, certainly, that we deal with pretty well. So here's a few of the vendors that we've started looking at. By no means do we have any all of these reports ready, but these are a lot of the technologies that Tim and I deal with a lot down in Australia and New Zealand. And we deal with these day to day, so this is kind of our hit list, I guess you could say, of what we want to get stood up pretty quickly. And of course, if any of you in the room works with these as well, or any others, then we'd love to help you to come and contribute, and we can all benefit and get some time back, which would be great. I'll go down to my nice speech, which is better than Tim's. I'll hand it back to Tim to cover off the tool sets and the...
So we mentioned we're not PowerShell gurus, so the way I started this project was simply by doing get calls in PowerCLI. So I started listing out what I wanted to actually extract from the environment, and then I came to a point of like, how do I get it into a document? And that's when a colleague introduced me to screever. So screever is a PowerShell module, simply installed from the PowerShell gallery. It creates a document in a standardized format, which can then be outputted to Word, HTML, XML and text. It was created by a guy by the name of Ian Brighton out of the UK. As I mentioned, it's available on the PowerShell gallery. You can also download or contribute on the GitHub page. We're going to touch on some of the commandlets and usage of it today. However, I highly recommend you hit up the YouTube demo of Ian's. It goes for about 45 minutes and will take you right through how to use this module. However, don't be afraid, it's very simple.
I actually started this. Tim told me about screever and I thought, oh no, I've got another module to go and learn and understand how it works and read the documentation. But some of the commandlets up here, you can see they're very straightforward. There's one called blank line, and guess what that does? That's right. So I didn't listen to Tim's advice. I dived straight in, and but I have watched the YouTube video pretty soon after, and it's definitely recommended. But within 15 minutes of downloading Screebo and looking at some of the examples, I was off and going, and they're all very straightforward as to what they do.
So when you install the module, it comes with about 32 examples, stepping you through each of the commandlets, how to use them. And if you can do a get VM host, for example, and you can pipe that to format table, you do the exact same with this. Instead of format dash table, you pipe it to table, and you've got that information in a nicely presented table, and you export that document out to whatever format. But we'll go through that in the demo. But it's very simple. So why are we here today? Well, we're here to show off what I came up with, which is the as-built report. So the as-built report is a framework. We're here showing you the vSphere report today. However, going back to that vendor slide, that is our wish list. There's other vendors out there. Whatever vendor we want to do, we want to target, or can do, we want to target. So utilising Screebo, it supports the multiple formats, doc, HTML, XML and text. We can do customised styles with style sheets, so you can customise it to your corporate brand or your look and feel. Health checks, so I wanted to take some of that vCheck functionality and incorporate it into mine. So being able to highlight configuration issues within reports. Timestamping, pretty simple. You want to know when that report was run, so it simply appends time and date to the file name. And then emailing those reports out. So you can save locally, or you can then specify your SMTP server details and then have that report emailed to you. So you could set that up as a schedule and then, you know, rock up to work at 9 o'clock every morning and there's your report ready to go. So here's the construct of the project. It's pretty simple. It's got a few components which I'll go through now. So it's got the base report. So it consists of a PS1 file and a JSON file. So one of the other objectives, which I didn't really cover off, but it goes back to that simplicity. For somebody that doesn't know PowerShell, the last thing I wanted is to them getting into a PowerShell script and having to modify things and, you know, potentially missing off a comma or an inverted comma, and then the script no longer runs and they don't know what the hell they've changed. So you don't need to modify scripts, you just need to modify the JSON file, which is a lot simpler than having to modify a script. So the base script simply calls out what type of report you want to run and then what style and stuff you want to set. So we have a subfolder for reports, and then within each within the reports folder, we've got another subfolder for the vendor or the technology. So in this case, we've got vSphere, and we've got a vSphere.ps1, which is the script which is doing all those get VM host, get cluster, get VM. And again, this particular report has its own configuration file. So it has the configuration around the level of detail that we're going to extract. It has the information around the health checks as well. And then finally, styles. So when we write reports, we set a style for that particular vendor, and I've just been going out to their corporate branding website, take their colours, take their fonts, and make it look and feel like a VMware report. So this is the JSON file for the base script. So we simply specify the author, the company details. So being system integrators, we deliver reports for customers, so we want to punch in the customer information there. And then there's the SMTP details. So the other thing we wanted to cover off with this is that we go to multiple customers all the time throughout the week, and even sometimes throughout the day. I didn't want to have to edit this all the time, so we've actually built in a CLI sort of prompting to fill this out, basically. However, then you get to the point and go, well, I don't want to fill this out every time I run it. So you can actually specify to save it off. So save it off in that particular customer name, and then select it as a parameter later on. Which leads us to the actual vSphere report. So, as mentioned earlier, I wanted to do a single report for multiple targets. So we support specifying multiple vCenter servers or ESXi hosts. We have multiple sections, so covering all the detail that you would expect out of vCenter. And then we've got 6 detail levels, which I'll cover off in the next slide. So on early feedback, we initially had 5. But on the initial feedback, when we look at those really large environments, we needed a more summarised view. So the summary level is still work in progress at the moment. The other 5 are all available today. And then the health checks. So it's all well and good, you know, having these sections highlighted or whatever within your report, but you know, you might have a cluster where you don't want DRS enabled. So we can toggle the health checks on and off individually. So, you know, if you don't want it highlighted that DRS is turned off, turn off the health check for that. And these are the detail levels that we go through. So disabled, simply don't report on that section. So if we want to turn off reporting for VMs, we simply set VM section to 0 and we won't even get any information. If we have 3,000 VMs, we might not want, you know, pages and pages. It's going to turn into a lot of pages of information, right? So we might just want that really summarized view. However, for cluster level, we want to go really deep and get all those advanced settings. So for VM, we'd set maybe 1 or 2, and then for cluster level, we could potentially set a 4 or a 5. So here's the JSON configuration for that particular report. Now, this is just for the vSphere report. So, you know, every other report could potentially be different. So mentioning before with storage arrays and stuff, we might not need 6 levels of detail. We might not need any levels of detail. But the configuration file is where the creator of that report or the contributors to that report can decide on what we're going to enable the end user to configure. So at the top here, we've got the name, the version, the status of the report. We've got an options section which enables us to mask or unmask the license keys. So, you know, you give out your report, the customer might not want to, you know, give that out with their full license key in it. So we can mask that if we want. We've got the info levels there, so as per section, we set it to anywhere from 0 to 5, and then we can start seeing the health checks there, which I'll continue on to the next page, and then, as mentioned, individually set true or false based on whether you want to flag those on or off. So now's the test. Everyone bow their heads and pray to the demo gods, because now we're going back to Tasmania to give you a live demo.
Nothing like a bit of high latency across the ocean, right? Cool, thank you. Can that be seen down the back? We didn't get a chance to. Thanks, mate. I'll grab you a beer later. So what we've got here, I've just connected to my vCenter server. That's all I've done. I've set the credentials into a credential file, and we just want to step you through. You know, obviously up here we've just got get VM host, native PowerCLI, nothing that we've done here. We just wanted to show everyone this, the output of this, just to set the scene as to what we've got. So if you run that, you get the information there, output to screen in the table, looks pretty good, but then getting that information out of there, you've got export to CSV and HTML and other things, but getting that then into a Word document or any other styling as well was part of the time-consuming part. So if we scroll down, this is a really basic example of screever. And I'll just walk through, I guess, line by line just to show you what each one does at a high level. So 29 and down on 36 where the brackets close, that's just everything inside of that document that we want. So within a document you create sections and you'll see a section there on line 30. So document will be at the top and the bottom of whatever you're writing basically. And then you start off with a section and you can set the heading styles. So you can go heading 1, 2, 3, and set the various level of headings. So then in your Word document, as you'll see, you get the indentation and the fully built out table of contents as well. On lines 31 and 32, we've just got a paragraph and a blank line just to show that you can insert custom text in there if you wanted to say something at that point in time. And of course, you can call any other variables and stuff that you've got in the script. So if you wanted that to say, here is the section for host, $host or something like that. Lines 33 is doing what we did 45 seconds ago, but we're just saving that into a variable called VM host settings. And then the next one down on line 34, we're outputting that to table, which, as Tim mentioned, is the screever commandlet. And we're giving that a name of VMware host settings. And you'll see when we run the next report where that name comes in. As you run through in verbose, it will output to the screen as to which section it's running through and which table it's outputting as well.
You don't have to specify a name. However, if you don't, it just shows a GUID in the verbose output. So it just makes it cleaner.
Yep, and then on line 36, we're exporting using export document. So we've got all of that document information. We want to export it out to a document into a path where I've set the variable of before, and this time we're just doing a format of Word. And you don't usually do this bit here, pass through and invoke item. I'm only running that so it launches Word for me.
So where the format is there, so we've specified Word, you can specify multiple formats at the same time. So you don't need to run the script multiple times to get multiple document formats. So that's the basic output from screever. Much easier and simpler to do than any other method I've ever found. So that was the starting point for this project. And then we'll go into the next demo where we'll show some more.
So this is the new as-built report. So when we said we want it to be simple to install and use, all I had to do here was go out to the GitHub page, download the project as a zip, or if you've got Git, you can just pull it down through the repository, and then I can come in here and run this new as-built report. There was nothing else I had to do. So for that first JSON file, we'll show you now, but we created kind of the walkthrough menu prompting so that anyone who wants to run this can just download and run it without having to do anything else.
So here we specify whether we want to save the file or just run it once. So we say yes. So you'll see in brackets there the default values. So if you want to save yourself some typing, just hit enter. Specifying the output path, the name of the report, what version it is, what release status, because this might be a draft document or something. So that's the name. And then company information, so whether you want to actually specify it for someone. If you do it internal, you might not care about this information, but Matt will just punch in some random details.
We're at VMware, VMW do, little w, right? Company contact, let's go Duncan. Is he here? And we'll skip through the next ones here. So it's just the email address, the phone and the address as well.
So again, you only need to run through this on the first pass if you haven't specified a JSON file, so you don't have to do this every time.
And again, we've got the SMTP information, so if you want to set this up to email out, you just run through this little wizard here to set up the SMTP. So I'm not actually going to fill that out because we won't do it. But again, we've got a couple of defaults there. We won't do SSL and we don't require auth. Sender can be Joe Blogs or Bloogs, and the recipient can be the proper blogs this time. And then it'll prompt you multiple times. If you want to put, if you want to put more than one recipient in, you can do that. So I'll say yes to that, and we'll put Tim. And it'll just keep prompting you, so you can put as many recipients as you like. So we'll go no to that one, and then you can set the message body content of the email itself that'll go out. I'll leave that as the default again. And that'll run through the report. So this one, I've done this one as a level 2, which is informative. And so this, you'll see in the document here in a minute that this is really high level as well. There we go. So that took 17 seconds to run there down the bottom. And in here I've got my as-built report in the Word format.
So this, with Word, you're going to be prompted with this every time. It's purely to state that because we've specified a table of content, it needs to go through and refresh. It is in the documentation. You simply click yes, it'll refresh all the section headings and update that table of contents. So this is a cover page which is included in that default VMware style sheet. We've specified, the name of the report, the company it was for. Scroll down a bit, we've got the author, the date, the version. Then we'll go into table of contents, specifying all those different sections. Now, what level did we do here?
This is a 2, so this is informative.
Yeah, so this is an informative view. So this is a condensed kind of detailed level, right? So we've got basic vCenter information, cluster, resource, host, etc., all in a nice stylized document. So again, this can be in Word, this could be out to HTML, could be both.
So what I'll do now, I've got the vSphere.json here. So as Tim said, you'll have a JSON file for every report that's built. So if there was a Pure Storage one, there'd be a Pure Storage JSON as well. I'll just move this down out of the way. So this is where you can set the info level here, and what I'm going to do is I'll just change that 2 to a 3, and then we're going to run a much more comprehensive report that will show you a lot of detail there. And what I'll also do is I'll flick on the NSX section as well.
Yeah, I'll just quickly flick back. Oops, hang on. One. Do you just want to quickly cover off what we've
Oh, yeah, okay. So this is the environment that we're running this in. So we've got 2 vCenter servers at the top there in enhanced link mode, and the one on the right is basically just my physical server. So it's got the one ESXi host and multiple VMs in it. And across on the other side, that's the kind of main site, if you like. So that's called Site A. That's got NSX attached to it and wrapped around it, 3 ESXi hosts and a bit more going on in there. So what we wanted to show here is 2 vCenter servers linked together, which you'll see in the report. And one's got NSX and one doesn't. And apart from turning on NSX, I'm not going to go and tell it at all that NSX doesn't exist in one of those environments. It will look for it. If it's not there, it'll just move on to the next section and keep going. So I've saved that JSON file, and we'll jump back into the next run through here. So what we're doing here, so before we had the target just as 1 vCenter server, so now we're targeting 2 vCenter servers. The credentials is just pulling in my credentials from a parameter before. On line 67 there, we've got the type, which is vSphere. So that's if you were running a different type of report, like a Pure Storage or a Nimble or some HPE, for example. You just change that type there. That's all you've got to do. So it's the same script that you run every time, just a different type based on what it is that you're running it against. As Tim mentioned, we can format out to multiple formats at the same time. So in this one, we'll do out to Word, text, and HTML in the same run, instead of having to run it multiple times. In the styling, we'll go with the Pied Piper style. I'm going to turn on health checks just to show you what that looks like as well. We'll put a timestamp on line 71, so it just puts a timestamp in the document name, that's all. And 72, this is where Tim said before, when we ran through that first prompting with all that information, we chose to save that out to a config file. I've actually got a second one here called Pied Piper, which has got slightly different styling, and you'll see that when we get to the report. So you can specify the JSON file with that as-built config parameter, so you won't get prompted for that every time that you want to run the report. So I'll go ahead and kick that one off.
So while that runs, so we mentioned the custom styling. So if you want to know how to create a custom style sheet, It's, again, utilising the screever commandlets, but just take one of the example ones there from the vendors, or take the VMware one. So you can set your own style sheet, really. So you can set page orientation, you can set the fonts, the colours, the heading type, the header types. You can insert additional pages. So for my company one, I've inserted a cover page and then an additional page with some extra information in there. You can also customise the table formatting in terms of, you don't want any borders, you might want thick borders, what colour the borders are, the alternative row colour, all that kind of stuff. So that's what you would specify in your style sheet. How are we going?
Getting there, I think.
So with this, we're going into multiple environments, or multiple vCenters. We're on a level 3.
Yep.
So we're getting quite a bit of detail and stuff out of there. And we're reporting back where we are. So this is where I mentioned where you need to specify the table name. If we didn't specify table name, then it would just come out with big long GUIDs and we wouldn't have a clue where we are. So by specifying that table name, we can actually, it's a lot clearer and cleaner to understand what is actually happening in the script. So this is the verbose output from Screevo. So it's not something I've done. It's just built into the module.
Should have about 15 seconds left. It's early morning back in Tassie, so it's struggling a little bit.
Should I do a dance? I'll flick over back onto the info level because, whoop. No, wrong one. Again, so we're doing a level 3, so that provides detailed information for individual objects. So again, going back to the cluster example, so we're getting information based on cluster. If we were to do a 4, then we can get information, detailed information for not only the cluster, but then we're specifying what VMs are running on that cluster, what hosts are part of that cluster, that kind of thing. So again, remember this is per section, right? So you can go from 0 to 5 per section.
All right, what are we, number 4? So you can see down the bottom there, the last yellow line, that took 126 seconds to run, so touch over 2 minutes. And when you see the level of detail in the report, it would have taken me quite some time to manually go and get this level of information and pull it out and get it into a document.
Ta-da! So now we've got a nice green header font there, different font, different colours, different justification for the cover page, same information in terms of author and everything, but it's got that different look and feel about it, right? So if your corporate colour is blue, make it blue. If it's red, make it red.
So you can see the table of contents for this one is probably a couple of pages long. I won't scroll through it, but that's the amount of detail that's been pulled out. And if I jump down to the first section, which is the vCenter server, so before we had, I think it was one table, right, and it just had very high level information. So now what we've got here is you can see all of the information about the vCenter server itself, the database settings, the mail settings, historical statistics, so on and so forth. So this is going a lot more granular than we did that last time and getting that detailed information out. If you have a look at the SMTP server and the mail sender there, that is the health check parameter that we turned on. That's why they're flagged in a different colour, because you haven't set your mail information in that environment. So, but again, that health check parameter, that can be turned on and off for sections. So if that's meant to be normal, you can go into that JSON file and turn that off, and then that won't show up in the report again. Similarly, if I jump down to clusters, you'll see here, the yellow's there because EVC mode's not enabled and my admission controls turned off as well. So down the bottom right there, you probably can't see, but this report is 104 pages in length of detailed information, consistently formatted throughout the whole thing.
And that's on a level 3. We can go to 5.
We didn't turn all the way up.
So based on initial feedback, we got some people to test against their large environments, and it was like, hang on, I'm getting like a 2,000-page document here. So that's why we're going back and working on that summarised view, because even in a condensed, what we've called informative, level 2, When you get 3,000 VMs, you get a 3,000 or 3,001 row table. Might not want that, right? That's going to run over multiple pages. So we're going to try and work to a much more condensed, summarized view.
So you might have thought, why would we want to output to text as well? And I mean, that's built into screever, but we actually had a pretty good use case for it as well. So I've run a report last week, I think it was, in text, and that's the one that I've just copied in there.
So again, working as an integrator, we go to customers, we do new implementations, and we set it all up and we get it working perfectly. We come back in, we get a call in a few weeks' time and they say everything's, falling over and we don't know what's going on. What did you do? Well, this is a perfect example, right? At the end of our implementation, we do a level 5 full comprehensive dump out to text. We come back in 3 weeks later, we run the same check again, and we do a differential on the text file. We can see exactly what's changed within that environment. So it's a perfect use case for that configuration management. If you set that up on a schedule every day, you can go back every day and compare the documents and see what's changed within your environment.
It's also really beneficial for us because in our managed operations component, we do monthly reports for customers as well, and in there, ideally, we want to highlight, changes, adds, removes, and that kind of thing. So at the end of the month, we could schedule this to run monthly in that environment, and then when we're writing that report, we can just go and do a quick diff on the 2 text files, have a look at some of the changes that were made that month, and call it out. There might have been some new volumes from a storage array presented, some changes like that. DRS disabled, someone did some work and forgot to re-enable it. All of those kind of things.
So we've made it through the demo. Oop, can't work this to save my life.
It's 2 buttons, it's a bit complex for a Melbourneian, right?
You'll go. This is you, yeah?
Yeah. Thank you.
Bit complex for a Tasmanian?
Yeah, well done. I'll own it. So we're on to the contributing section. So we're starting to wrap up now. And like I said at the start, it's not just about writing code and pushing it into GitHub that you can do. There's a few things you can do to contribute. And the first thing is just to run the report. So go and grab it. Tim will have some links in a minute. And go and download it, run it in your environment, and just see how it goes. That'd be excellent. When you do run it, if there's any issues, please don't just close it down and say, oh, that was shit, those guys didn't know what they were doing, and move on with your life. If you can actually raise them with us, that'd be awesome. We're out on the socials, but the best place to do that is probably on the GitHub page itself. That way we can track them, and people other than us can go in there and help out as well.
Our testing team up until this point has been these 2 guys and 2 others back in Melbourne. So, it's about 5 guys that we've been using for testing. So we want to expand it to you guys. We're going to uncover issues or whatever. So just flag them with us. We want to address those problems, right? We want this thing to be perfect.
So if you do see an issue and you know how to, then please go ahead and resolve it as well. So by all means, just log the issue and then at least it's known about. But if you've got the capability to resolve it, or if you want to have a crack at it, then give that a go. Or also, if you raise an issue on something that you've got no idea on how to fix and you just saw it, have a look at the other issues that are there, and there might be something that's in your expertise domain that you go, well, I can do that, in a couple of minutes, so you can go and fix that other issue, but you've left your original one there for someone else to pick up as well.
Didn't work.
Bitcoin's up and down a bit, yeah. The next one is to request and create as well. So by all means, go and request for a new report or for new sections in a report. If you run an existing report and you've noticed something's missing or not quite there, again, on the GitHub page, go and make a request for a project enhancement. We can't guarantee that we'll get to it, but again, hopefully we want to pull everyone in and try and benefit off each other and get our time back. So if anyone else is out there that can help as well, that'd be fantastic. And the last one for us is just to share as well. So go and share it with your colleagues. Go and tell them what you saw at VMworld. You can only understand half of what we said, but that's fine. Go and share it at your VMUG as well, or out on the socials. If you want to take it to your local VMUG and do a 15-minute talk on it, by all means, that'd be fantastic. Even if you're new to speaking and you didn't have a topic to talk about and you think this is a good idea, we'd love you to take it and share it at your VMUG. And if you want any help from Tim and I, if you want some material from this deck, or if you want some ideas on what to talk about and bounce around, then reach out to us and we're more than happy to help.
Spread the word.
I'll give it to Tim to wrap it up.
So we'll just summarise. Information is available on my blog at timcarman.net.
Don't all go there at once, though. His web server can't handle it.
Shut up. It probably will fall over. But like I said, the code's available on GitHub. I am no master of Git at all. Matt is a master Git. I'm not a master of Git.
Not bad, eh? We've made him sweat a lot by all these pull requests.
No, but seriously, if you know a lot about Git, I could really use your help to get it in the right place. So come and see me or reach out to me. If you've got an idea for a report or a feature or something, hit us up on the VMware Code Slack or the PowerShell Slack channels. The way you find us there is the same as our Twitter accounts. And then just a personal thank you to these people up here. The guy on the top left, that's Ian. Without Screebo, I wouldn't have been able to develop this project, and I certainly wouldn't be up on stage here today. So a big thank you to him. The guy in the middle is Jake Rutsky. He's the guy who had that initial vCenter report in which I drew a lot of inspiration. So thanks to Jake for having that initial concept. That guy on the top right, well, that's a bit of a mugshot. I don't know who he is, but no, he volunteered to co-present. I swear it was just to get a free ticket to VMworld, but
you got to do what you do, right?
He's been an absolute champion in getting me and this project ready for today. And not only has been helping in my project, he's smashed out 3 exams in the last month, one of which was a VCAP for NSX, and he also deployed a private cloud for his company or something. So
yeah, I'm having a holiday soon.
Yeah, he's going to have a holiday.
Not in Melbourne.
And then everyone else there has either contributed in some way knowingly or unknowingly. I've found a bit of their code or a post on a forum or something that's really helped me in developing this project. So a big thanks to them. Finally, can we just ask that you fill out the surveys? This is our first time doing this. We'd really love the honest feedback. The main purpose for me submitting this to VMworld was to get out and do some public speaking. I want to improve. I'm not going to be hurt if you tell me I'm crap. So please just provide some feedback to us both. And then here we are. So thank you.
We've got a few minutes for
We've got a few minutes
Q&A,
if anyone wants some questions. Did we all like it? Thumbs up?
Sweet.
Sweet.
Thanks for coming.
I'll look forward to the pull requests.
Someone do more than one at once. That'll really get him working.
Yeah. Questions?
Yes. Awesome job. Do you see any value using Visio diagrams in your reports?
It's an idea that I had. However, there is another project going. Alan Renouf had a tool that generated Visio reports way back in the day, and then someone from the Florida VMUG, I believe, has rejuvenated that into a version 2. So whilst I had the idea, in my head, I was tackling this problem, but they've gone and done a version 2 of that. So I think it's the South Florida or the Florida VMUG. Have a look on Twitter for those guys. They've got that's something that produces Visio diagrams. Yep.
Yeah, just a question about the compatibility between the Screebo, PowerShell, and
Core.
Yeah.
So Ian's been working on PowerShell Core. We did try and incorporate it into our hackathon winning submission, but look, it's still early days. So again, it's open to you guys to go out and test it and see what problems we raise and see how we can address those.
So at the very least, it's just PowerShell 5.1 and...
Yeah, we've been testing on PowerShell. We haven't had a lot of time, unfortunately, to test on Core, but we want to get it there, but that is dependent on Screebo module and also the vendor modules and stuff. So whilst, Core's there, we've got to get the modules.
I think Screebo goes back to 3 or 4, PowerShell 3 or 4, yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Next.
Have you guys worked on any reports beyond vSphere that are ready for testing today?
We've got some, so on my GitHub we've got a development branch, but let me tell you, I've got to clean up the branches. But we've got one, a very basic one for Pure. So if Cody or Barks is here, I'd love to input, but
that's what the reports folder looks like at the moment. So we've got a Pure Flash array, UCS, some NSX components there as well. We've got a Nutanix one, and then vSphere at the bottom. So we've got a few more that we're working on kind of outside. That's in the repo at the moment. If you went there right now, we've got a few more on the side.
And we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? So one of those UCS ones was from Martin Smith. He's from VMware. I just reached out to him and said, can I use your code? And he said, go for it. So I've just ported that in to utilising Screevo and instantly. So if there's already reports available that are extracting that information with PowerShell, we'll just reutilise those. I was speaking to one of the Veeam guys last night. There's a Veeam one that I'm going to go and look at porting over. So, you know, we can take what's available, utilise that, and then build upon it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
How honest do you want the feedback?
Well, hey,
No, I'm just
his hair's not that bad, is it?
I was actually wanted to ask just about this, the third-party vendors. So, I mean, the vSphere stuff, I've never had issues with PowerCLI. It's very easy to just get the info that I want really quickly.
Yeah.
But say I want to go into the UCS or Cisco, or we use Checkpoint in the big IP, and I want to get a documentation for each client deployment in a layout like that. Do you have anything, an example of that anywhere?
So I mean, like if you look at the top one, that's a Pure Storage flash array, right? And Pure Storage, they've got their RESTful APIs on their device, and they make a PowerShell module as well. So that's written using the PowerShell module. But if the vendor or the device doesn't have a PowerShell module, then you need to fall back to using a REST API calls from within PowerShell, from within the report still. It's just that you're doing REST API calls and getting that information back rather than like a get dash whatever. Was that your question, sorry?
Yeah. The previous questioner asked about Visio diagrams. Do you have any plans to do any other sort of graphical output
Let's
reports
see.
with
Let's
these?
see if we get back here next year. See if we can.
What do you want, a free ticket again?
Absolutely.
Well, great presentation.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I mean, this whole project has come together in our spare time, or mostly my spare time, in 9 months. So it's, you know, we've both got young families and obviously full-time jobs, and this has all been a labour of love in our spare time. This is the whole reason I've opened it up to the community and told my boss that, sorry, it's not your OP, it's getting shared, is because we want to scale this out as quickly as possible, right? I can't produce every report I want to, but with everyone's help, we'll get there much quicker.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next.
Same question on the flash array folder. Do you guys only have a Pure report currently? You'd mentioned Nimble when you're doing the...
Nimble's one that I've started just off to the side. I'll try and get it up into the repo. By no means is it complete or anything, but I've certainly started on it, yeah.
Cool, thank you.
No worries.
What's the largest environment you've actually ran against?
Oh, we forgot to mention...
Yeah, our friend, so I reached out to a guy only 2 weeks ago. He wrote a blog post on simply capturing some information out of a vSphere environment. No, it was a bit of information I didn't have in the report yet. So I reached out to him and showed him and said, look, you interested in getting involved? And he was like, absolutely. So he's jumped on board, and, you know, just the amount of help and stuff within the last 2 weeks. So it's Ryan Kovalevsky, I believe, from the UK. Hope I've pronounced that right. But he's been awesome, right? So he's already addressed some speed quality issues within the vSphere report. He's also made suggestions on how we can better write code and clean up our code. So, like I said, it's been a bit of a rush.
what was his environment size?
His environment size, sorry, he's got like 1,500 VMs and, 3,000 VMs. He's got something like 500 hosts.
Yeah, he's got multiple.
He's got multiple environments. So he did identify issues, and we've gone in and quickly fixed those up. And it was him that suggested that we need that summarized view, because even what we called summarized, he was getting a 3,000 row table.
Awesome,
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted to come over. I mean, Australia and New Zealand enterprise is different to US enterprise as well, right? And similar to UK. So what we call big down there, what you guys call small over here. I got that from lunch today.
Any other questions? Nope. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very
It's been
much.
awesome. Thank you.